Today we are going to talk about 2x2 rib. Really this applies to any rib stitch, but we're going to talk about tension and getting that wonderful, tight, really nice, even looking rib stitches. First, I want to go ahead and take a look at these samples that I have here and show you what's going on here. So you can see, let's see if I can get these here. All right, so if you can see with these two, the rib is really loose, it's really wavy, the stitches look really uneven as they're going, almost seem to get bigger, and it does not look good. If you put a rib like this at the bottom of your sweater, you're going to have that waviness on the bottom, and it's a look that I don't prefer. So let's talk about what happens with these. So this first one, let's see, it's this one. So when I knit this rib, I knit with the same needle size I used for the stockinette stitch up here. And I used the exact same tension for all my stitches as I did with this. And you can see that it is so loose, it does not look good. Now a common way to solve this that some people say is to just go down a needle size. So I did that for this sample. You can see it's maybe a little bit tighter. The bottom still really looks awful, and it's still just way bigger than the rest of my stockinette stitches. But for this, I actually went down one needle size, and it still does not look good. So then, let's put those aside, because I want to talk about these. This one you can see looks great. If I pull on it slightly, it's going to have the same tension as the stockinette stitches, so when I wear it, it's going to lay flat on me. And this looks pretty similar up here, but then down here starts to look icky again. So this sample was made with the technique that I'm about to show you. This one was as well. So what's the difference? The difference is this one I cast on with a somewhat pretty tight cast on. Not too tight, but a rib knit, it automatically wants to stretch a lot. So if you cast on a little bit tight, it actually holds it together a little bit better. It works in your advantage to cast on tightly in this situation. With this, I use the same technique, which is why it looks great up here, but down at the cast on edge, I cast on in a typical loose, the tension that I typically cast on, and you can see down at the cast on edge, it's very loose and not that pleasing to the eye. So let me show you now what my technique is to make these stitches look so nice and tight and uniform. So first of all, like I mentioned previously, I'm actually going to cast on tight intentionally. So I'm going to use a long-tailed cast on because you can make it pretty tight. It's not hard to do. Most people have problems casting on too tight with this method. If you need help with that, I've got another video to help you with that. But in this case, we actually want to cast on pretty tight. Let's see, let me make sure I have a multiple of 4. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 12. Perfect. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to grab my working tail, my working yarn, and I'm going to start by just knitting 2 stitches normally. I'm going to do a knit 2, purl 2 rib. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull on my working yarn just a little bit, and I'm going to bring it to the front. And then I'm going to knit my purl stitches. And this move right here is what's going to solve most of the problems. I'm going to move my yarn at the back, and I'm going to pull on it. So with your yarn in front, it's naturally going to want to move to the front, and if you pull on it, it's going to have this little kind of U shape here, and it doesn't want to have a tight tension. If I'm pulling all that out of it by pulling it a little bit tight. So then I'm going to pull on it a little bit and knit that stitch. And then I'm going to knit one more. I'm going to pull on it just a little bit, hold it as I bring it to the front, and purl. So essentially what we're doing, every time we switch between knit and purl, the yarn is moving from being held in the back to the front or vice versa. And what that does is it creates this little line, a diagonal line between those stitches where it's moving from here to back here. And that is what makes your stitches so much more loose than when you're just knitting or just purling, because there is an extra length moving from here to here instead of the yarn constantly staying on one edge. So by pulling on that, as we switch between knit and purl or purl to knit, by pulling on it, we're taking out that gap. We are pulling it back together and we are forcing it next to each other. And that is what creates the tighter stitches next to each other. If you have any questions about it, please ask me in the comments below. If this works out well for you, let me know, and I'm happy to help with any troubleshooting, any questions you might have.